Hello, my Bill 5000 Nation. How's everyone doing today? Hopefully, everyone's having a great day. If not, I hope it gets better from here. All right, we are back with another MrBallen video. This one is titled Horror Inside Abandoned Cabin, the Yuba City 5 story. Seemed interesting. I like weird stories. All right, I am excited. Let's get into today's video. Go ahead, turn them lights down low, put on something comfy, cuddle up with someone special. The Yuba City 5 story, Horror Inside Abandoned Cabin. Let's get traumatized. Yeah, let's go with that. Let's get traumatized. All right, let's do it.
There is a very famous mystery called the Dyatlov Pass incident that occurred in the 50s in Russia, where you had 9 highly experienced hikers go out on an expedition and then not turn up at their rendezvous point when a huge...
Very interesting story. So many conspiracy theories about what actually took place. All of it sounds shady as shit to me. It really does. I'm not even gonna lie. Can't say I'm a conspiracy theorist or anything, but it's weird. It's weird, okay? It's weird. I love it though.
search party is launched and they're discovered. The circumstances under which they are found are truly baffling. I mean, you had people with clothes, some without. You had people that were mildly radioactive. You had people that were missing body parts. And none of it really fit the narrative that there had been an avalanche.
None of it makes a damn bit of sense. Why was they naked? And I know they try to explain that, small amounts of craziness makes you take it off whenever you get that cold. Like you start to think you're hot and because you're like hallucinating heat or something. I don't fucking know the process behind it. All I know is that's what happened. So they explained it with that. The radiation, they said it could have just been natural. Or then there was another one where they was like art students, so it could have been something that they worked with or something like that. See, some people in the water or around the water, forget which one. Naked, radioactive, torn to pieces, like a fucking abominable snowman came through there rampaging like a sumbitch. I really like this. Yay. So if this is like that, oh, this is going to be an amazing freaking story.
Answer that they had died of hypothermia. It was almost like something had attacked them, but we have no idea what it was.
Fucking Bigfoot.
And so that mystery has endured for years, for decades.
Radioactive Bigfoot, somehow radiation.
And so today's story is referred to as the American Dyatlov Pass incident because you have a group of people that go missing inexplicably and then are located under baffling conditions. And just like the original Dyatlov Pass, we know in today's story what happened to them for the most part. We just don't know why. But before we get into today's story, if you're a fan of...
We know what happened to them for the most part. How I feel about that. So we know like a vast majority of what happened, but we don't know everything. Or we know enough. There's a difference, people.
Strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you come to the right channel because that's all I do here, and I upload 3 to 4 times a week, if not more. And so if that's something you're interested in, I would encourage you to gently karate chop the like button and then subscribe to this channel and turn on all post notifications so you don't miss any of my weekly uploads. All right, let's get into today's story. Today's story takes place in 1978, and it focuses on 5 young men that were best friends, basically inseparable, who all lived in Yuba City, California, and they came to be known as the Yuba City 5. These 5 young men were all either mildly intellectually disabled or had a mental health disability, but they were all very high functioning. Jack Hewitt was the youngest of the group. He was 24 years old. He was fairly uncomfortable in social situations and didn't do well around strangers, but around his 4 best friends, He blossomed and was incredibly funny and lighthearted and got along extremely well. Ted Wheeler was the oldest of the group. He was 32, and he kind of took a big brother approach to Jack Hewitt. He kind of looked after Jack specifically. Those two were very, very close. And Ted was known to actually occasionally make phone calls on Jack's behalf. When Jack felt uncomfortable calling a stranger on the phone, Ted would step in and be the bigger brother and make those phone calls for him.
Oh, sweet as shit. That's a good big brother. I didn't have one of those ones. I had one of the asshole ones. It happens though.
Bill Sterling was 29 years old and he was deeply religious. He would spend a lot of his time going to the library where he would read Christian literature. Jack Madruga was 30 years old and he was an Army veteran. However, he had been discharged from the Army after a medical evaluation determined that his IQ was too low. So he was discharged from the Army.
Yes, I did not know that for the longest time, but you have to have a certain amount of smartitude. Yeah. Oh, I forget. I you do have to pass test. You don't know how to add 2 plus 2. You are not going to get a gun in the military.
Was the designated driver of the Yuba City Five because he was the only one of the five that had a driver's license. Jack loved being the driver because he loved his white and turquoise Montego, a 1969 Montego. It was like his prized possession, and he felt very proud driving the group around. Last but not least, you have Gary Mathias, who was the unofficial ringleader of the group. He was 25 years old. He also was an Army veteran, and he as well had been discharged following a medical evaluation where they diagnosed him with schizophrenia. So he was discharged and he went back home to Yuba City to move in with his parents. Initially, when he came home, he really struggled. They hadn't found a good way to manage his diagnosis, but eventually his doctor found the right mixture of medications and treatment, and he totally stabilized. And in fact was able to even hold down a job working part-time with his stepfather in his gardening business.
That's cool, but still, that really sucks for him all at the same time. Now that it was back under control, like completely under control, couldn't he have gone back into the military if he really wanted to?
Now, what really brought this group of five men together was their shared love of sports, really basketball specifically. When they got together, they were either talking about basketball, watching basketball, or playing basketball. The game
Never was a fan of basketball. I was a fat kid. Running back and forth on the court was agony. I don't want to run back and forth every time someone else catches that damn little ball bouncing around like a fucking crazy thing. No. Oh, who's got now? We run the. Oh, some. No. I'll go ahead and take my D for a day. I brought my clothes. You can still put it down that I changed. I'll change. I don't give a shit. I ain't playing it. I hated basketball. I liked football. You went one direction for at least a period of time. It wasn't constantly back and forth and constant running. No. I liked football.
Gateway program that they were all enrolled in, the Voc Rehab program, they had a basketball team. And so they all played on that basketball team, and they were super passionate about that team. In February of 1978, their basketball team, along with a host of others, were slated to compete in a tournament.
He could have used anything, but he had to use that one.
Where the winners of this tournament would get a free trip out to Los Angeles. And so the Yuba City Five was so excited about this tournament. Their tournament was supposed to start on February 25th, 1978, but their favorite basketball team, UC Davis, was playing just 50 miles away from them in Chico, California, on February 24th, so the night before their big tournament. So they decide that they want to go watch this game, right? They want to go out to Chico and root on their favorite team, but make sure they're back in time so they can get a good night's sleep before their tournament starts on the 25th. So they load up in Madruga.
Let me guess, this is where she goes bad. Oh, fuck. I don't know. We still got 10 minutes left. You could all turn around.
Is Montego. They drive the 50 miles out to Chico,
But he told us they all die horribly. Never mind.
California, and they root on their team, UC Davis, who ends up winning the game. Now, there were multiple witnesses that saw the Yuba City Five at this basketball game, so we know they were there. Following the game, the boys loaded up into Madruga's Montego, and they drove a short distance to a little convenience store in Chico where they got sodas and cartons of milk and some snacks. And the shop owner would actually say to investigators that he remembers them because they came in at about 10 p.m. and it was when he wanted to close down the shop. And so he remembers feeling annoyed when this big group, 5 men, come in and they're buying a bunch of stuff because it delayed the shop owner's ability to close down the store. That sighting at the convenience store would prove to be the last time anyone would see the boys alive. So that night, some of the boys' parents had stayed awake to wait for their son to come home. And when they didn't, and it was starting to get late, the parents started calling each other to ask if they had seen their son, and no one had. And so not only was it strange because the boys always told their parents and loved ones where they were going to be, but the idea that they would jeopardize a good night's sleep before this tournament that they had been obsessing about just seemed very, very uncharacteristic. And so by very early the next morning, all the families called the police and said something is wrong. So the police officer in charge of the investigation was Lieutenant Lance Ayers. Ayers had gone to high school with Ted Weir, so he had a personal connection to this investigation and was more motivated than perhaps he would have been otherwise to make sure they are doing everything in their power to find these boys. When the first few hours of the search don't turn anything up, Lieutenant Ayers...
So, what I'm understanding is, if you know the cop, they're going to bring their A game, but if you don't know, you're going to get B squad. You ain't getting the A team, you're getting the F team. That's shitty. I mean, awesome that they're going out for him like that, though, but I mean, MrBallen kind of made the popo sound a little shitty at that moment. But the sad thing is, he's just telling the truth. Like, when you got a little personal stake in it, you're going to be a little bit harsher with it.
Decides that he's going to greatly expand their search radius. And it was because of this expanded search that just a few days later they were able to locate Jack Madruga's Montego car. Presumably, after the boys had gotten their snacks and drinks at the convenience store around 10 p.m., they would have been driving straight back to Yuba City because they had that big basketball tournament the next morning. But the car was found 70 miles away from Yuba City, away from Chico, up in a remote forest on a dirt road. The families of the boys...
And I already see a thing that says bodies.
had no idea. They couldn't even speculate.
Okay, sorry, MrBallen, but we're going to play across your face here. So we have Yuba City, Marysville, Olivehurst, Chico, car, bodies.
Why that car would have driven up that access road into this remote forest. There was no reason they'd be going up there, at least none that the families would have any understanding of. In addition to the strangeness surrounding why it was 70 miles away up in some remote forest, it also didn't make any sense that the boys had abandoned the vehicle. Even though it was covered in snow, there was no indication that it had been stuck in snow. There was a quarter tank of gas, so it didn't run out of gas. There were no keys in the ignition, so when the police had to hotwire it to drive it back, the car ran just fine, so there was no mechanical issues or any engine issues. They literally put it in park in the middle of nowhere and got out and left. They looked inside the vehicle and all that was in there was some wrappers and cans and cartons from the snacks that they had presumably been eating since they left that convenience store. But no keys, all the doors were shut, one window was down slightly, and some wrappers. That was it. So the search shifts to now looking exclusively in the area that this car was found. And over the first couple of days following the discovery of the car, they're looking everywhere and there's no sign of the boys. And then unfortunately, a massive snowstorm rolls in and basically covers everything to the point where it's impossible to search. and they had to abandon the search until the early spring when the snow had melted a bit. During this waiting period, the families of the boys put out rewards, were requesting information from everyone and anyone that had it. The police were fielding thousands of tips and unconfirmed sightings about where they could be, but none of it amounted to anything. They made no progress. They had no idea where these boys were. On June
Damn,
4th, 1978,
that's awful. Did they at least have fun at the game? I mean, we know they're dead. I seen the thing on there that said bodies. It was over there. Car bodies. Pretty good, decent. You know, decent stretch distance between them. I mean, no, it wasn't a lot between the dots, but those dots are probably bigger so we can see it, and we don't know the mileage per inch. So it could be a pretty good distance. It looked it.
so just a little over 3 months after the boys had gone missing, some motorcyclists that had been on a long road trip happened to be up in those mountains on those dirt roads near where the Montego, the car, had been discovered. They were about 20 miles from that point, and they had found this cul-de-sac that they parked their bikes in, and they decided to just kind of stretch their legs, and they look down a little ways off the cul-de-sac and they see this old looking trailer, and they decide, just out of curiosity, to just kind of walk over and see what it is. It would turn out that it was a trailer maintained by the Forestry Service, but it really hadn't been upkept in a long time. And so as they're walking over, they see that one of the windows has been broken, and they think, okay, it's more than likely abandoned, and they think they're just going to open the door, poke their head in, and just see what's in there, just purely out of curiosity, because they're kind of in the middle of nowhere, and they're just curious. So they go up and they open.
If I seen a trailer out in the middle of bumfucked Egypt, I'd want to know what it was there for too. I can't say that I'd just go up and just open the door. No, my luck, there'd be some crazy hilljack in there, butt ass naked, eating Cheetos, getting ready to shoot me in the face. I don't want that. I don't want that to be the last image that I see before I get shot in the face. Oof. Oof.
The door, and they're immediately hit with this horrible, horrible smell, and they shut the door and they're like, I don't know what's in there. It smells like death. It would turn out that it was
death.
death. It was
I said the same thing. It was, oh fuck.
one of the Yuba City Five. It was Ted Weir, who was the oldest of the group, who looked after Jack, who was the youngest of the group. It was his body. The mystery really only deepens when you go inside the trailer. Ted Weir was found wrapped in 8 blankets on this bed inside of this trailer. His feet were badly frostbitten and gangrenous. He looked like he had lost about 50% of his body weight, and he had growth on his face, like his beard, that showed he'd been laying there almost certainly for about 13 weeks. Ted had died from a combination of starvation and from exposure to the elements. But in the trailer, in plain sight, were loads of fire-making materials. You had paperback books, you had kindling, you had matches, you had firewood. In addition to the fire-making material, there was additional clothing, heavy clothing, like for cold weather. There was lots of food, like sea rations, military sea rations, where you can basically pop it open and you have some food, enough to feed someone for at least a year. So there's food in plain sight, there's fire-making supplies.
Then why the fuck was this fool wrapped up in 8? Well, I mean, I'd be wrapped up in 8 blankets too if there's a laying there. I mean, before I start pulling out everything else. But I would start pulling out everything else pretty fucking fast. Could you build a fire in the trailer? Did it have a place to build a fire, or would I have to build the fire outside? Or just say fucking just set the whole damn thing on fire? I don't know. I don't know how these things work. I'd figure something out. Something would fucking burn.
In plain sight. And also there was a propane tank out back that was basically full, that if they just turned it on, they could have turned on the heat inside of the trailer, and then you would have had heat for quite some time. But there was no signs that any of these supplies were ever touched. Now, one could...
What the fuck am I hearing here, people? Are y'all hearing the same damn thing I'm hearing? Like, okay, so far at least one of them dead. Just walked out the car, shut it, did whatever. like it's what the hell ever. Dies of starvation and everything else due to, you know, the elements and sheer stupidity because there was food all around him.
Potentially make the case that perhaps Ted, lacked the common sense to make a fire and to use up all the resources that were right in front of him. But Gary Mathias, his shoes were inside of that trailer, and Gary was in the army. And I was in the military, and I can tell you that the number one thing you're taught, pretty much no matter where you go in the military, is how to survive. You're taught to be resourceful and to use things in front of you to stay alive. And it just seems very strange that if you had Gary in there, that he wouldn't have immediately started a fire, or at least instructed the group to start a fire and eat the food, turn on the gas tank. Those are things that are just basic life-saving skills. A day after Weir's body is found inside of that trailer, searchers discover Sterling and Madruga's remains located approximately 11 miles from where the car had been located. Their remains showed signs of significant predation. Animals had gotten to their remains, and so there wasn't much left of them. But from what was left, investigators were able to determine that both had passed away.
What's for dinner tonight?
From hypothermia. 2 days after Madruga and Sterling's remains are found, Jack Hewitt's remains are found as well, 2 miles from the trailer where Weir had been found. And Jack Hewitt had also died of hypothermia. So 4 of the 5 have been located, leaving Gary Mathias, who to this day has never been found. The only thing that investigators discovered was about a quarter mile away from the trailer where Weir was found, they found a bunch of blankets and a flashlight. It seems like that could have been where Gary at one point had been, but they don't know for how long, and they don't know where he went after that. So in addition to wondering where Gary went, you gotta ask yourself, why did these 5 men drive 70 miles out of the way the day before they knew they had this big basketball tournament that they were not about to jeopardize? Why did they drive 70 miles away onto a remote dirt road in a remote forest? Why did they then suddenly park their car, turn it off, take the keys out, shut the doors, and then hike 20 miles in the dead of night in a snowstorm to some random trailer, and then get in the trailer where there's ample food, there's ample blankets and additional clothes, but use none of it and die over a 13-week period from starvation and exposure? Why? And so there's many theories as to why this happened, ranging from, Gary Mathias is somehow responsible and that's why we haven't found him yet, to
I was about to fucking say that. I was. Like, what if he did it? What if he took him out there? Okay, so at least 2 of the bodies, the remains was so fucked up that you wouldn't be able to tell exactly how they died. He could have killed him. He could have just left the old dude in there, just unable to do shit somehow. I don't know. Could have killed the other guy and then just dropped the shit and walked away. Maybe it was all set up with someone somehow, somewhere, somewhere.
they simply took a wrong turn, and that's how they wound up in this mountain in the middle of nowhere.
You know how many damn wrong turns you'd have to make to end up on top of a mountain? I don't, because after the first one, I usually stop making them. And another thing, why the fuck would they get out their car? There's still a half a tank of gas left. I mean, what was the consensus of that? Hey, let's get out the car, climb up this mountain, get in the tallest tree, and we'll look and see where we're going. Why else would you have gotten out the car? That has to be the reason why.
But none of it really accounts for the purposefulness of all of their travel. If they had gotten lost, police believe they would have been maybe driving in loops. They wouldn't have just driven in a straight line reached this point in the road and then gotten out. It's not consistent with being lost. So
Mm-mm.
we don't know why they wound up on that road or why they decided to go to that trailer or what caused them not to use the supplies, but something happened. Something forced them to do this, and to this day, we don't know what it was. So I'd love to hear your theories as to why the Yuba City 5 did what they did. Give me your best theory and I'll do my best to go through and respond to as many as I possibly can. If you like this story and you want
I have a few theories. Just a few. You can go ahead and dip out now if you want. I'm okay with that. I understand. All right. Now, for those of you that are still here, theory one. What if dude did do it? What if dude was a driver? I don't know who drove. Any of them could have been a driver. What if he kept them so distracted that they wasn't paying attention and then they ended up there? Like, maybe he had this all planned out. I don't know why he would have it all planned out. I don't. They all seem cool with each other, good friends. And like he's getting money out of killing his friends, you know what I mean? I just don't understand why they would have left that little trailer thing. Like MrBallen said, there was people in the military and everything else in this little group. So even if you don't know how to build a fire, you know how to put on clothes, you know how to wrap up in blankets to stay warm, and you know food will keep you fed. I, even if you don't know how to make a fire, everything else you're still good. You're golden. It's all good. Theory two. None of them was really paying attention. They was all hopped up from Coca-Colas and footlongs from the basketball game and those cheesy nacho things. And they was going bucket wild. None of them was paying a damn bit of attention. They just literally kept making wrong turn after wrong turn after wrong turn after wrong turn, just not even knowing. They end up at this place and they're like, well, shit, where do we go from here? Well, I don't even know where we are. We don't have a map. Let's climb the top of this mountain, get on the tallest tree we can, and we're going to look down and see which way we need to go from there. And then everything just went south. That's the only two options I can come up with. There's a few more, but I recently watched a video on here about aliens being able to hack your body. Maybe one of them got their body hacked, drove the other ones out there. The aliens did some weird shit to them and made them go just derpy, and they didn't know what was up, what was down, left, right, or who haws was bing bongs, and I don't know. I don't know what was going through their heads. It was alien shit. And then they took the one that they computer hacked and went and went away. Yeah, I say it's probably the weirdest possible thing you can think of. Probably like if they wouldn't have died and they would have lived and made it back, it'd been one of those stories and be like, man, that was stupid. Like, how did that even happen? Just saying. All right. Tell me what you guys' theories are. Oh, I want to hear some good ones. I mean, I want to hear some just straight fucking killer bomb doggedy do shit. All right. If y'all enjoyed today's story as much as I did, please leave a thumbs up. If you're a fan of the spooky, scary, strange, deranged people dying, like, yeah. And I don't mean just like dying. I mean like dying in some weird ass ways. Like, why? Why? You know? Why you die like that? think about subscribing because, dude, I wonder why half these people die. Every video, it's like, man, why? Didn't your mama teach you no damn better than not to die?